17 U.S.C. 107 federal law allows citizens to use copyrighted media for fair use. That is criticism, news reporting, teaching, and parody.
Kuma, Yahweh, we are put to Yibeka, we are new Semisameka, arise of you, your praise, O Yahweh. Kuma, let your enemies be scattered, and let those that hate thee flee from before thee. Let all of Yasharah, Yisrael, who love, worship, and praise Yahweh, give him thanks by saying hallelujah.
Shalom and welcome to Into All Truth. We welcome donations and we thank you everyone for donations that you made for calendars and cookbooks, which the update should be coming out before the new Hebrew year, the new Israelite year. And so make a donation of $20 or more at livelightwild.com and you will get the calendar and the cookbook. Just remind me to send you an update once you've purchased it with a proof of receipt. We thank you for everyone who's donated. And I pray that as you listen to this study, that the Ruach HaKodesh will lead you into all truth and show you things to come. Baruch atah kulam, in the name of Yahusha HaMashiach. Amunah. Who's purchased a calendar, I am still working on the calendar and I'm going to make you guys part of it because this discussion about the lands is also about the calendar and the center of the earth and the location of Eden because they're all related. So there's going to be a survey. I really am sincerely asking you guys to comment because I'm trying to determine the first day, and this whole axis mundi shift is a big part of that. So now I'm going to go and talk to you like your family, all right? I'm going to talk to you so plain, in plain Canadian English, because I don't speak in riddle or rhyme, okay? Sometimes I talk with an American accent, or sometimes I talk with a West Indian accent just to make you feel like family and thing and speak a little clearer and more lovingly, right? But I must use the hard English because I have to be clear about this. So I'm not trying to be hard or disciplinarian with people. I just don't want no trickery, all right? I'm not here for no trickery or deception, all right? So listen. So this is what we've been taught about our earth, that our earth is a ball. The reverse Pangea part is true. And the flat earth part, it's a little bit true too. It's actually a lot true. So this is what we've been taught.
The first quarter is called the east, because it is the first. And the second the south, because the Most High will descend there. Yea, there in quite a special sense will he who is blessed forever descend.
We've also been taught that this is the spin and shape of the earth, which is very accurate, but we should remove the ball and leave it at this configuration of the earth, with four concentric rings of land.
Full understanding of the construct. We're not on a ball. Our Earth currently consists of 4 concentric rings of physical land, beginning and spiraling out from the 0-point axis at the center of the plane, just like a drop of water that falls into a larger body of water, therefore creating a ripple effect, beginning from its point of impact, concentrically expanding outwards. The very middle center of this vast earthly concentric plane is what's known as the 0-point axis. This is what we refer to as the magnetic North Pole. This central pole is not just a symbolical metaphor, but an actual physical marker said to be a magical, or should I say, magnetic pillar, sometimes referred to as a holy mountain or the tree of life.
You can watch my calendar videos. There are no planets represented anywhere in Scripture. So what we call plane nets, mazels, mazes of the L's, maze el tovs, mazes of the L be good for you are stars of the fallen angels that are seeking to rule and have power over you. He also discusses that we're going to have to swallow the big red pill, that there are extraterrestrial lands beyond the lands that we dwell on, which is true. And they're often represented like this moon plasma map. However, there is no need for us to do away with the globe. You see, when Satan changes everything, he mixes the truth with a lie. And so I want you to consider that he's mixing truth with a lie. Here is the proper representation of the earth. Genesis 1:7 says that Yah made the firmament and divided the waters which were beneath the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And so what you get is this globe. It is actually a globe. There are people who, when they send the rockets up, they show that the rockets just skim along the firmament. They can't get past what they call the Van Allen belt that NASA is even admitting to. And when they send submarines below, they hit on something which is a kind of firmament. So the tree is placed within this crystal Baal. And so this is where Hasatan gets the Baal earth. And it is set within the earth with the firmament above and the firmament below. There is a horizon because the great Holy Sea and the underworld are now ruling the planet. Baal earth was added to the description of the earth. And that's why with Tartaria and all that, all of those beings who were under the earth, the rejected ones, are now topside of the earth. So that's what the Baal earth representation is about. And this plasma map that's based on the moon's negative images of the land being true lands, those are the lands of the fallen. Why? Because Satan rules the Holy See. So that Holy See is also considered a land. But I also think there are beings on the various lands, outside of the lands that are written about in Jubilees. But with all of that being said, we're here to talk about the lands of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So we're going to get into that. But we're going to end up with trying to figure out where the true axis mundi, the true center of the earth is. Because I no longer believe that it is necessarily at the Polaris star. It's actually been shifted down because of reverse Pangea. But let's get into the lands of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. If you'll remember in the last lesson, we talked about how what is now the Mediterranean Sea was once all land. But that was the gates of Gibor or Gibraltar or the Pillars of Hercules. And this is referred to in Illustrations of America, illustrated by John Ogilvie. And it is also referred to in Jubilees, according to John Ogilvie, the mountains Calfe and Abel, now known as the gates of Gibraltar, the jaws of Gibraltar, were opened by an earthquake, receiving then also an inundation from the Atlantic, which now makes the Mediterranean Sea, being before all continued land. Some double this again, making 4 divisions of this our first part of the world: Europe, Asia, Aphaia, and Egypt. Others later have more reduced them to 3, joining Egypt to Asia and the other lands being Aphaia or Africa and Europe. You guys can check out all these references. I've got about 4 or 3 or 4 of them here on both of these slides, and they will indicate that north, south, and east were all connected. North America was connected to Africa, so-called Africa, and North America was connected to so-called Eastern Europe. And it was all a circle around the center of the earth, and there was a head who ruled. These are also the accounts of the many uproars, changes in the earth, judgments really by Yah, or wars that destroyed the earth and drove the continents apart. So that's the premise that we begin with here. Reverse Pangea. You guys know that's my thing. Major judgment was the judgment of Babylon, the 3 towers and the Tower of Babylon. The next one was the deliverance of Israel from Egypt. There were also just many wars and then judgments after the fall of Israel. It says there will be great earthquakes. The 4th part of the land was judged. The 4th part of the earth was judged over here in North America. And I think that contributed to the mud floods and disasters all over the world because of the fall of Israel and Yah's judgment against Israel. So that is also the reason for the destructions in the earth. And they were always siding with Egypt. So a lot of Egypt was destroyed. All right, so the lands of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. A few people had commented that they wanted me to kind of do a picture or a map of how these lands were divided. Because honestly, I've been working on this for several years and reading those scriptures over and over again. And it's just taken a lot of time to bring it into focus. So I know it's kind of hard to understand, and I'm trying to understand it myself as we go. So I may make some errors, so just bear with me, trying to figure it out as we go along. So this is the great journey of discovery that we're on in the unveiling times that we're in. So anyway, so let's get into it.
Hi, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Sorry to be late.
not a problem.
I'm CJ Craig.
Of course you are. I'm Dr. John Fallow. This is Dr. Cynthia Sales and Professor Donald Huke.
Hugh.
Huke.
Okay, and you are the Organization of Cartographers for Social Equality.
Well, we're from the OCSE. We have many members.
How many?
4,300 dues-paying members.
What are the dues?
$20 a year for the newsletter.
Let's start.
Wait, I want to see this.
This is Josh Lyman.
Indeed you are.
Josh, this is Dr. Fallow, and
Hi.
who's Mary Men.
Yes.
Should we begin?
Yes. Plain and simple, we'd like President Bartlett to aggressively support legislation that would make it mandatory for every public school in America to teach geography using the Peters projection map instead of the traditional Mercator.
Give me $200 and it's done.
Really?
No. Why are we changing maps?
Because, CJ, the Mercator projection has fostered European imperialist attitudes for centuries and created an ethnic bias against the Third World.
Really?
The German cartographer, Mercator, originally designed this map in 1569 as a navigational tool for European sailors.
The map enlarges areas at the poles to create straight lines of constant bearing or geographic direction.
So it makes it easier to cross an ocean.
But
Yes.
it distorts the relative size of nations and continents.
Are you saying the map is wrong?
Oh dear, yes. Look at Greenland.
Okay.
Now look at Africa.
Okay.
The two land masses appear to be roughly the same size.
Yes.
Would it blow your mind if I told you that Africa is in reality 14 times larger?
Yes?
Here we have Europe drawn considerably larger than South America. When it's 6.9 million square miles, South America is almost double the size of Europe's 3.8 million.
Alaska appears 3 times as large as Mexico, when Mexico is larger by 0.1 million square miles.
Germany appears in the middle of the map when it's in the northernmost quarter of the Earth.
Wait. Relative size is one thing, but you're telling me that Germany isn't where we think it is?
Nothing's where you think it is.
Where is it?
I'm glad you asked. The Peters projection.
It has fidelity of axis.
Fidelity of position.
East-west lines are parallel and intersect north-south axes at right angles.
What the hell is that?
It's where you've been living this whole time. Should we continue?
Uh-huh.
Gerardus Mercator, who created the projection in the 16th century, was able to preserve direction by varying the distance between the latitude lines, and also making them straight, creating a grid of right angles. But that created some other problems. Where the Mercator fails is its representation of size. Look at the size of Africa as compared to Greenland. On the Mercator map, they look about the same size. But if you look at a globe for Greenland's true size, you'll see that it's way smaller than Africa. By a factor of 14, in fact. If you want to see a map that more accurately displays land area, you can use the Gall-Peters projection. This is called an equal area map. Look at Greenland and Africa now. The size comparison is accurate, much better than the Mercator. But it's obvious now that the country shapes are totally distorted. Here are those dots again so that we can see how the projection preserves area while totally distorting shape. If you yourself want to poke fun at the Mercator projection, you can do so by going to thetruesizeof.com, which is a fun tool that allows you to drag around whatever country you want around the map and see how it is distorted depending on where it is.
So, you're probably wondering what all of this has to do with social equality.
No, I'm wondering where France really is.
Guys, we want to thank you very much for coming in.
Hang on, we're gonna finish this.
Okay.
What do maps have to do with social equality, you ask?
She asked.
Salvatore Natoli of the National Council for Social Studies argues, in our society, we unconsciously equate size with importance and even power.
I'm going to check in on Toby.
Go.
These guys find Brigadoon on that map. You'll call me, right?
Probably not.
Okay.
When third world countries are misrepresented, they're likely to be valued less. When Mercator maps exaggerate the importance of Western civilization, when the top of the map is given to the Northern Hemisphere and the bottom is given to the Southern, then people will tend to adopt top and bottom attitudes.
But wait, where else could you put the Northern Hemisphere but on the top?
On the bottom.
How?
Like this.
Yeah, but you can't do that.
Why not?
Because it's freaking me out.
So she says it's freaking her out. Now remember, the West is freak. So she gets pushed out by the true representation of the earth. It says here, this is Shem's lot. And there came forth on the writing Shem's lot in the middle of the earth, which he should take as an inheritance for himself and for his sons, for the generations of eternity, from the middle of the mountain range of Rapha, from the mouth of the water, from the river Tina. His portion goes towards the west through the midst of this river, till it extends and reaches the water of the abyss, out of which this river goes forth and pours into the sea Miat, and this river flows into the great sea. And all that is towards the north is Japheths, and all that is towards the south belongs to Shem. I found this great map. It's called 1781 Bosch Nouvelle Map of the world on the polar projection. And I like it because it's a good representation of the size of each of the land masses, the continents, based on the video that I just showed you guys. So here it says that his lot or portion came forth in the middle of the earth. And it says in the bosom of the tongue which looks towards the south. So it says, and Shem's lot is in the middle of the earth, of the mountain range of Rapha. From the river of Tina, his portion goes towards the west through the midst of the water, till it extends, till it reaches the water of the abyss. Towards, I guess the mountain Rapha must be up here in the middle. So it comes out somewhere in here and then goes towards the center, towards the mountain Rapha. The abyss would be in the center and the mountains would be here, and here's the Rubus Negro. So this is India. It's going all the way through here. Again, I know this is tedious, you guys, but we got to do it. And it dumps out somewhere in here. Then it extends towards the mountain Rapha, which must be on these petals, these 4 petals. Or says, this is Carasso. This is the bosom of the tongue, which looks towards the south. So this is the bosom of the tongue which looks towards the south. So that's this tongue, okay? And it looks towards the south, which is in this direction, or straight down towards Africa, right? It looks towards the south. For this sea is named the tongue of the Egyptian sea. So the water coming out of here is the Egyptian Sea. So this is the Egyptian Sea. They call it the Atlantic Sea, the Ethiopic Sea, This is the Egyptian Sea. To the mouth of the great seashore of its waters, and extends west. So it's going south, and then it extends west. Well, where does Africa fit back in? Right in here in the west, right? It extends west to Afra. So this is to Pharaoh, not, so this is Ayin Pharaoh, not Aleph face of the Resh, okay? So Pharaoh, not Yah. It extends in this way to the west, to Afra, and it extends till it reaches the waters of Gihon. So this is Gihon. Sorry guys, but my pointer, I don't know how to activate it, but it's right here if you can see it. So it extends to here. This is the River Gihon. Now the River Gihon is said to actually go through here, or it goes all the way down here. And it extends till it reaches the waters of the River Gihon, and to the south of the waters of Gihon, to the banks of this river. So it's going this way to the banks. So the banks are on this side, right? And it's going all the way down this way. So everything this way, east, towards Africa of the Gihon, is Shem's. All right, the dividing line is this river. Now it could be connected here, because some maps show it as here, some show it as here. So, you know, let's just please make some creative allowance for that, because we're figuring that out. Because it went west towards America, then it went south down and stayed on the rivers of Gihon, the banks of the rivers of Gihon, and now it started going east. Okay? So it's going east till it reaches the Garden of Eden. So the Garden of Eden is somewhere around in here. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about, you guys. We're going to see a little bit of different information. I've shown you this in other videos on my other channel, right? Atlantis has been positioned here. It may be the Garden of Eden, or it may be somewhere down here. And it says, to the south thereof, to the south, from the east of the whole land of Eden and the whole east, it returns east from the east of the whole land of the river. So we're going south, 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 we're going east, 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 till it reaches the mount. So it's going in a whole circle again. And till it reaches the bank of the mountain named Rapha, and it descends to the bank of the river Tina. So I think it's going back in a circle. Like these lands descriptions seem to be a circle. It would be like this is the whole land of Shem. I don't know how to make my pointer get more active, but this would be the whole, I gotta shake it like this. Shake it like this. Would be the whole, I'm just speaking to you plainly, guys. I don't speak in riddles or rhymes. I try to just speaking plainly to you. So this is the whole land of Shem. And then Noah rejoiced that this portion came forth for Shem and for his sons, and he remembered all he had spoken with his mouth in prophecy, for he had said, blessed be Yahweh Almighty of Shem, and may Yahweh dwell in the dwelling of Shem, because he knew that Garden of Eden is the Kodesh of Kodeshim, the set apart of set apart places. Yah loves to set things apart, this from that. And the dwelling of Yahweh, the Mount Sinai in the center of the desert, and Mount Zion, the center of the navel of the earth. These three were created as Kodesh, set apart places facing each other. And he knew that a blessed portion had come forth for Shem and his sons unto all generations forever, the whole land of Eden, the whole land of the Red Sea, the whole land of the east and India, and the Red Sea and the mountains thereof, and the land of Bashan, and the land of Lebanon, and the islands of Kaphtor, and the mountains of Sinir and Amah, and the mountains of Ashur, and the land of Elam, and Ashur, and Babel, and Susan, and Madai, and the mountains of Ararat, and all the region that is beyond the sea, which is beyond the mountains of Asher, towards the north a blessed spacious land, and all that it is in it is very good. So we included India, right? We included India. We included all of this land of Elam in here. We included Assyria in here. Okay, and Arphaxad's land up here. And also, he said that these three great mountains, Rapha, Sinai, Zion, they all face each other, creating a triangle here. Somehow, he included the mountains of Ararat, which are in here. Okay, so Mount Ararat, India, Mount Rapha at the center of the earth, Eden, which is to the south, and on the way east, right, is to the south thereof, to the south and in the east, and Mount Zion, and all these mountains face each other. So that was the land that came forth to Shem. Now let's look at Ham. I don't want you guys to forget that the sons of Shem, who were associated with the name Africa or Afar, had the the wa at the beginning of the name, and then the watchful eye, and then the face or the mouth, and then the head. Okay, so it's ayin, face, head is Africa, versus Pharaoh or Farika. Farika is ayin, face or mouth and head. Ayin, okay, ayin, face, mouth, head. And also, the Africa is associated with an offering and awe, whereas Pharaoh is associated with the eye of Horus, the ayin, and the face of the head. So this is the enemy, okay? This is the enemy, is the ayin, the all-seeing ayin. So this is the difference between Africa versus Farika, freak. Super freaking in Frika, Faroka. Okay, got it, right? And so what did she say? You're freaking me out. And for Ham came forth the second portion beyond the Gihon, towards the south, to the right of the Garden of Eden, and extends towards the south, and extends to all the mountains of fire, and it extends towards the sea of Atel until the west, till it reaches the sea of Ma'uk, that sea into which everything which is not destroyed descends. Okay, so we went over this before when we talked about Japheth's lot. This area here is Ma'uk. Okay, it's between what we call so-called Eastern Europe, which is really Western Europe, and North America. This is the Sea of Ma'uk. Ma'uk is also for Akhenaten, Akhenaten. So it is like brother Aki, like Aki and Saltfish, my Ak, but it's also Akhenaten, for Akhenaten, Egypt. So my brother of Egypt, right? Like Put. So Ham came forth with the second portion because he's the middle son. And so his portion was beyond the rivers of Gihon. It was further down south because the head fits in here, right? Okay. It's sort of like a lower boundary, I guess. And it is to the south, to the right of the garden. Now, just as we saw in the video that I showed at the beginning, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to rotate the picture. Why? Because we're seeing from Yah's point of view. And so south is always up and north is down. This is something I know a lot of people commented on in watching these videos. And so I'm going to adjust to that to help us adjust to see what Ham's land looks like. And so they're talking about how his land is defined by the Gion. Now the Gion may be this or this, depending on how they defined it in ancient days, right? So it's saying that his land is to the right of the garden. So if you're Yah, you're looking down on the circle of the earth, and south is up, then to the right, if you're to the right, you're Ham and you're to the right, that means the east is to the left. Okay? And so Gion, it says, for Ham came forth the second portion beyond Gion towards the south, to the right of the Garden of Eden, to the right of the Garden of Eden. And it extends towards all the mountains of fire, and it extends towards the west of the Sea of Atal, and it extends towards the west till it reaches Ma'uk. So it goes west, 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 until it reaches Ma'uk. Okay, so we talked about that, remember? This is the Sea of Ma'uk here, where Japan is, where Japan is, where Yavin was. This is Yavin's land. Javan's land is Japan. And this is the Sea of Ma'uk here, because he's got land on this side and on this side. Okay? So it's this land here. And we can see in this image as well, it would be this way. One of the really distinguishing things about the land of Ham is that just like he is in the west and they worship Dagon the fish, his lands look like a big fish. Remember when the Ark of the Covenant sat in the camp of the Philistines, in the land of the Philistines, and it kept knocking over Dagon the god. Dagon is the fish god of the Philistines, and the Philistines are descendants of Ham. Okay? So, let's keep going. And it goes forth north. So it's going this way towards the mountains of fire. So these are some of the tallest mountains in the earth. Here, the mountains of fire, right? Along this ridge, right? And it extends northerly. So it's going up north towards the Sea of Ma'uk. So it's going up this way. All right, so let's do another flip to kind of get more of this in the picture. So it's going in this direction, right? And it's going north. And it goes forth towards the north of the limits of Gadir, and it goes forth to the coast of the waters of the sea, to the waters of the great sea, till it draws near to the river Gihon, and goes along the river Gihon till it reaches the right of the Garden of Eden. And this is the land which came forth for him as a portion which he was to occupy forever for himself and his sons unto their generations forever. So he basically got everything in America that approached towards Africa, and that was his lot. And then it went down towards South America on the west or mountainous side of South America and shores of the Gihon towards those great mountains. Right? And that's where its borders end. And his lands include Eden and everything. So that's where his borders, the borders of Ham, would end. Note how the Gihon goes right through, and there's Kara lines versus Negro lines in the bottom right-hand corner. So Kara, Karaite, Judas Iscariot, Karaite Jews versus Negro Jews. So this is Nagad versus Negah. So Nagad means prince, Negah means serpent. Nagad versus Negah. One is Esau and one is Jacob. So, the land of Ham starts at Gihon, right? And is all of the region to the west of it, up into America and beyond. It covers this land over here in Australia and stuff. And then it comes back towards the mountains, the Celt Mountains, and then goes through America over to the Gates of Gadir, which is Niagara Falls, to the top of that. And then it heads east, and then south back down to near where Eden is. Okay? And one of the distinguishing things about his land is that because he worships Dagon, remember I think it's the Philistines, and so they have the big fish tail is part of their land. So it's going to include Australia and China, okay? And it would go back with the more ancient maps. It's going to go all the way back. All right, so this is Carta Marina Nova Tovola. It's interesting, the name, because the Holy See belongs to the Pope, to Hasatan, the Prince of Tyre, the Prince of the underworld of water. Okay? So that's the land of Ham. And it says, and it goes towards the north of the limits of Gadir, and it goes forth to the coast of the waters of the sea, to the waters of the great sea, till it draws near to the river Gihon, and goes along the river Gihon till it reaches the right of the Garden of Eden. And this is the land which came forth for Ham as his portion, which he was to occupy forever for himself and his sons unto their generations forever. All right, and then we go back to Japheth. We've already done Japheth, but Japheth again starts at the river Tina, okay, which empties out into the sea of Mayat. And for Japheth came forth the third portion beyond the river of Tina to the north of the outflow of its waters, and extends northeasterly to the whole region of Gog. So now we're getting east and west confused again. And to all the country east thereof, and it extends to the north and extends to the mountains of Celt towards the south, towards the Sea of Maok, and it goes forth to the east of Gadur as far as the region of the waters of the sea, until it approaches the west of Farah and returns towards Apharag, and extends easterly to the waters of the Sea of Mayat. And it extends to the region of the river Tina in a northeasterly direction until it approaches the boundaries of its waters towards the mountain of Rapha, and it returns towards the north. Okay? So, again, it's the river Tina is going all the way up here, emptying into the Baltic Sea, and then you head, they say east, but it's actually west, because the meridian of Marcour is basically at the Tina or Ganges River. Okay, and that's a meridian determining separation of the earth. And so everything beyond there is not east but west. So you're going west, 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 and then you come to the Sea of Maok. It extends to the mountains of Celt towards the north, toward the Sea of Maok. Now, you've got to see in these older maps, especially the old map of Canada, that these things were all connected. So these mountains, the Canadian Celtic mountains, were also connected into Eastern Europe. Okay, and see how they go right across the country? So these are the mountains of Celt. That's why the Europeans are called Celtic. All right? They mixed in with the Hebrews, and so now they started thinking the Hebrews were Celtics. And this is the Strait of Anim, and so these are the Celtic mountains. The mountains of Celt are the Rocky Mountains in Canada. Rocky Mountains. I'll show you some maps that show that the Canadian Rockies are the mountains of Celt. Okay? So Japheth is the Celts, okay? Was the original Japheth chocolatey? We'll talk about it in the next video on Japheth. So, towards the north and towards the Sea of Maok, and goes forth east of Gadir, as far as the regions of the water of the sea. So then it heads east towards Africa to the east of Gadir. Now, what is Gadir? Gadir is, remember we talked about in the other video, here, this used to connect to Niagara Falls. The Mediterranean Sea was once connected to Niagara Falls. So these are the gates of Gadir. These are the gates of Gadir, Gibraltar. So it's called Niagara Falls on one side, and it's called the gates of Gibraltar on the east side, Niagara Falls on the west side. So it extends to Gadir. In other words, Japheth's land is Canada. Okay? So America is Ham's land, Canada is Japheth's land. But it's all Babylon. It goes forth to the east of the Gadir as far as the region of the waters of the sea. And it extends till it approaches the west of Farah and returns towards Afarak. So Farah, and it goes forth east of Gadir as far as the region as the waters of the sea, okay, of Maat. So this is the Sea of Maat, which points to the south, right, which we said when we started with Shem. And then it says, and it extends to the river of Tina in a northeasterly direction until it approaches the boundary of its waters towards the mountain Rapha, and it turns round towards the north. And this is the land which came forth for Japheth and his sons, and the portion of his inheritance which he should possess for himself and his sons and for their generations forever, 5 great islands and a great land in the north. So the 5 great islands include Greenland, Japan, and I think Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and New Brunswick. Used to be a couple of islands themselves. Okay, so there's like 3 islands, including like Greenland. And then there's Japan, and I think there was another island there, or there's another island close to. It's not Britain because there are accounts of the islands of Britain actually breaking away and becoming separated within recorded modern history. They weren't on their own before, so it doesn't include Britain because that's part of the African land. So according to this book, Ireland, Ur of the Chaldees, and it has a lot of inaccuracies in it, but it has a lot of accuracies as well. In near association with the effects of the earthquake attributed in this text to this rain may be quoted the 76 triad, 3 subordinate islands of the island of Britain, the Isle of Orkney, the Isle of Man, the Isle of Wight. Afterwards, land was so rent by the sea that Monegalisi became an island, and in the same manner Orkney was rent into a multitude of islands, and other parts of Alban, which is Scotland, and Cambria became islands. And the extraordinary bed of Avon from Bristol to Severn is evidently an immense cleft formed by some tremendous convulsion. Okay? And Cair Ordonant, the city of the Rift River, the city of the Rift River, Cair Ordonant, the city of the Rift River. The Welsh name of that ancient city seems to support this hypothesis. Whether the rupture produced an earthquake similar to that recorded in the text or by volcanic eruption cannot now be determined, further than that the agency of the latter may be rationally inferred from the proximity of and to it. Okay, and then a great shaking in the land of Israel and the fire of Yahuwah may be understood as disturbed formations, volcanic actions of the modern geologists. The Quran refers to the inhabitants of the wood near Median. Now, Median is actually located, in this case, in Britain, as having been destroyed and of lofty towers that were thrown down. Okay, so this Median is referred to as to be distinguished by the Median by the Red Sea. Okay, so this land, Britain, was not part of Japheth's land, although when he got the identity, he came and took it. So, to review again, the land of Shem is here, or the land of Ham is here. goes all the way around to Australia and then comes back into here to connect with the land, with Eden and the land of Shem. And then Japheth's land is here. Includes Canada. So, those are the lands. Remember, this is theory. Remember, this is theory based on jubilees, which I feel is accurate in many ways, but it could be mistaken. I'm not always saying that it's canon. I'm not trying to add to the word, but it has a lot of accuracies in it. Okay? And so this may change. Keep that in mind. What I'd like to explore next is the question of flat Earth, which I still believe in, but not the location of the sun and the moon as it's put forth on most maps. I don't believe it's above the North Pole, and here is why.
And the first quarter is called the East, because it is the first. And the second the South, because the Most High will descend there. Yea, there in quite a special sense will he who is blessed forever descend. And the first quarter is called the East, because it is the first. And the second the South, because the Most High will descend there. Yea, there in quite a special sense will he who is blessed forever descend.
When I started looking at the Prague Clock, which was built in 1410 before 1492, what I noticed several years ago was that it was kind of lopsided. Everything was kind of pulled around, and it's been featured in a number of videos. And of course, what they always show is a video I just showed you of the sun and the moon moving around the axis of the Polaris star, which I believe is correct. And you can see the Big Dipper will move around Polaris in a very symmetrical fashion. However, everything's sort of been pulled off and lopsided, and that's what this Prague Clock shows. And what it shows is that very clearly that Africa is the center of the Earth. This is the axis of the Earth, the axis mundi. When you're looking at it, south is up, okay? And that's a proper way to view the clock. South is up on the clock, and Africa is deep in behind. What you also find is that north is down, and that's not the axis of the clock as many of the videos for the Earth as a plane represent. It's just not true. And so when we look at the moon and we look to the witness of the moon, it tells us the truth as well, of course. And I've shown you guys this before, that when you look at the moon, you see this accurate size of Africa. And that's also represented in this map that shows you America, probably Canada, India, and Cuba, China and Western Europe can all fit inside of Africa. And the comparative population size really shows you that the Chinese and the East Indians really have the overpopulation problems, because Africa's really only got 40 people per kilometer squared, while China has 149. The UK has 274. India has 454. And the United States has 127, and Europe 747 per square kilometer. So really the Western countries are really the most overpopulated and out of balance with nature. Now, I'm not a follower of the Quran, but I do know that the Circle 7 Moorish Science one, and I'm not a Mason, nothing like that. I teach Torah. But it does say in this particular citation in this book that the Moors really controlled the West here. Beyond that, they also controlled the area of Atlantis, even up until very recently. And it says their dominion and habitation extended from northeast to southwest Africa, across Great Atlantis, even unto the North, South, and Central America, and also Mexico, and the Atlantis Islands before the great earthquake which caused the great Atlantic Ocean. And the Moors had control of the Atlantic and Mediterranean. At that particular time, it says, confirming in song the extent of the Moorish Empire or dominions of Axum or Atlantis. And so Axum is what Ethiopia is called as well. Axum. And so here's my conundrum, because I'm working on the calendar, and the way that you call out the first day is from actually the axis of the earth, which I no longer believe is the North Pole. And I believe it's Atlantis. And Addis Ababa actually is the only country in the world that has a perfect 12-hour day. And the scripture goes into there are only 12 hours in a day. The night is separated from the day. There are night watches. And so this is what I'm dealing with the calendar, is changing this. But what all of this led me to was, when you look at this axis of the earth, it is as though the sun has been dragged away with Africa, just as the book of Enoch says, that the Most High will assuredly descend in the south, as he does even today. So what he did was, when he separated our sin as far as the east is from the west, in other words, he removed his promised land away from the west to the south and the east, he took the sun with it. And so that's why there's this lopsided clock in Prague, because the sun and temperatures used to be more balanced in the earth. But since Pangea, right, my thing is reverse Pangea, everything has slipped away lopsided. So when we look at this clock, we see that the north and the west are in darkness. And those are the lands of Japheth and Ham. And the lands of Shem are in the light. And the sun, the days on average, and everybody knows this, but you got to really think about what it means, because Hebraic thought and the way Yah does things is highly functional. Everything means something. So he has caused light to shine on a particular place and people. And so the east and the south are where he'll descend, and this is where the greatest light is, and the perfect day. The day at the shortest is about 10.5 hours, and then it goes longer than 12 hours to just maybe under 13. And this is why the days and the times and the seasons are called out of it. And so, and even when you look at this map, you have the eye. It's like you have the eye of Yah competing with the eye of Ha-Satan. So you have the ayin on the bottom, the black pupil eye, which is darkness and night in the north. And you have the horizon, you have east and west. And then after that, you have daylight, and you have summer solstice is on the top side where Africa is. And so these things all mean something. But most importantly, it shows you that Africa is the axis mundi. Now, this is showing probably around the Mediterranean as being the center of the earth. But when you go down a little further towards perhaps where actually Ethiopia is, that's where the 12-hour day is. And that may possibly be where Eden is. So Yah's promise to Israel is that he'll make desolate the sea of Egypt, and he'll lay his hand on the river with a strong wind, and he shall smite the 7 streams, so that men shall pass through it dry shod. And there shall be a passage for my people that is left in Egypt, and it shall be to Israel as the day when he came forth out of the land of Egypt. And I will make desolate mountains and hills, and I will dry up their grass, and I will make rivers islands, and dry up the pools, and I will bring the blind by the way that they knew not, and I will cause them to tread paths which they have not known, and I will turn darkness into light for them, and the crooked things into straight. And these things will I do, and will not forsake them. The secret things belong to Yahuwah our Elohim, but the things that are revealed belong to us and to our children forever, to do all the words of this law. So this is one of the things that Yah is going to do, smite these 7 streams. And there are 7 rivers. There are the land of Eden is a well-watered land that I believe is situated between Africa and America. Still, I believe it's there. It could be called Atlantis, whatever you want to call it. And there are no planes that fly overhead. And I showed you the triangular slave trade went around it. It was called the triangular slave trade for a reason. And there's a reason why planes are just not flying over it. It's a direct route from the West Indies to Africa, yet they fly through Europe. So how can we somewhat confirm this? And how can we, my ultimate question is, do I start the clock from along the axis of Addis Ababa or from the axis of Cairo? Both of them are occupied by Esau, Edom, and the Midianites and the Ishmaelites all mixed together there. And of course, they're fallen angel seed. And the Midianites they have a role in these end times to return the priesthood. So they are dark like the tents of Kedar. They have the tents of Kedar. So not everybody among the Ethiopians is Esau. There's Ishmael's there, and the Midianites are there, the sons and daughters of Keturah. So there's a whole role, good roles that everyone has to play, and bad roles within that. So I'm not speaking against Ethiopians. I love and have met wonderful Ethiopians, and they also helped wake me up. So I'm guessing it's the Midianites. Yah says, if thou pass through the water, I am with thee. And the river shall not overflow thee, and if thou go through the fire, thou shalt not be burned. The flames shall not burn thee. For I am Yahuwah thy Elohim, the Holy One of Israel, that saves thee. I have made Egypt and Ethiopia thy ransom, and given Sinai for thee. Since thou became precious in my sight, thou hast become glorious, and I have loved thee, and I will give men for thee, and princes for thy life. Fear not, for I am with thee. I will bring thy seed from the east, and I will gather thee from the west, and I will say to the north, bring, and to the south, keep not back. Bring my sons from the land afar off, and my daughters from the ends of the earth, even all who are called by my name, for I have prepared him for my glory, and I have formed him, and I have made him, and I have brought forth the blind people, for their eyes are alike blind, and they that have ears are deaf. When we read in Jubilees, it talks about Shem and his portion, as we've already said, extending to the Great Sea and in a straight line till it reaches the west of the tongue, which looks towards the south. For the sea is named the tongue of the Egyptian Sea, which I would see as more like the Egyptian Nile, because there's many fresh waters in there, right? To make power from. And the clue here is the Atlantic is the Ethiopic, which could be the Egyptian Nile. And then Jubilees 10:29 says, and Canaan saw the land of Lebanon to the river of Egypt, that it was very good. And he went not into the land of his inheritance to the west, that is, to the sea. And he dwelt in the land of Lebanon, eastward and westward from the border of Jordan and from the border of the sea. Now, east is towards Africa, away from the Atlantic or Ethiopic or Egyptian Sea. So the first river, great river you'll run into, running north-south, is what they call the Nile today, but I believe that's the Jordan. And there's more evidence towards that. So this image of the moon is based on this idea that the moon is a map of the this moon map, this image of the moon is based on the idea that this is the true map of the Earth. Whatever you see is dark is a negative image of the Earth. It's called the plasma moon map. However, I don't think that that's the case. I think the moon is a truer witness, and it is a negative image. So what is dark is light, and what is light is dark. So the Earth looks white, but normally it should be dark. I think it's also a map of the underworld. It's a map of the sunken continents, or things that have been blasted or judged by Yah, or set apart, or things that are being hidden. So Satan mixed truth with a lie when he defined the shape of the Earth, because the Earth is a sphere. There is a firmament above and a firmament below. So there are submarines that hit the bottom. They hit the bottom firmament when they go down very deep into the ocean. And of course, the rockets and stuff hit the firmament above, because it was a sphere, like a snow globe, set into a plane in the Earth, and a tree built within that. And so that is the shape of the Earth. And then the seal of Yah's image is on it. And so his face is on the Earth. And then it's like a tree in that there are branches that spiral downwards, even, roots unto the pit, the lower parts of the Earth. And so this plasma Earth map, to my belief and idea at this particular time, and I always leave myself open to changing and shifting, to me is a map of the underworld, or what was destroyed. And so the globe is really the underworld brought above, because we're living in the time of the overspreading of the abomination of desolation spoken about in Daniel. So the overspreading sea, the holy sea, is what the Catholic Church calls itself. And so they and the enemy ascribe to marine law, admiralty law, whereas we live according to Torah, the law of the earth, the law of the earth. And so that's why every time you go to court, you get on a ship, you have to go through all these water fountains and everything to go to the courthouse, because you're going onto the ocean. And so that is a map of the underworld of the ocean. And that is why it is so liked. And it's a popular idea. So, but nonetheless, there are some accuracies to it, because generally mixes truth with a lie. And so here we have this map. And so in order to find our way to, and we've talked about it many times, where Atlantis is or potentially is, but we don't know for sure. So we still need to narrow it down some more. So this map becomes a useful device. We can learn from this that there are some clues to the shape of the Earth. So here's more images of this plasma map. Okay, and so this is what it says Africa looks like. There's Lake Victoria. And, I haven't looked at it extremely closely, but I just kind of don't really buy it. But nonetheless, we can still learn from it. And so here we have the image. I basically used the same cross configuration to arrive at this image of the moon, using the moon as a model, okay? And so here is Africa, right? Matches up with this global map, and so it can be mapped right onto here. It fits right here, and Africa is big enough to be there, and of course, this is a bit generous because that's Eastern Europe over there. This is North America up here. And it actually aligns pretty well with other maps. And so it aligns pretty well with it in terms of the size of the continents and everything. Very well, in fact. In fact, that Peterson map is still off. It's still portraying the West and the North as being too big. they're even smaller than that. And so this is a better representation, the moon itself. So what we have to do, though, is we have to take a look at this image and we compare it to actual maps of the moon. Because if we're going to say that the North Pole isn't the center of the Earth where Eden is, it's simply the indrawing waters, and it's where Hasatan is. And there are a lot of people who say it's too crowded up north because they're like, oh, Satan's scared to go up there because that's the Garden of Eden. No, that's where his black rock is, but that's not where Eden is. Because Yah and the flaming sword are there, and he's scared of that. Like, he doesn't want to be around that all day long, right? Like, Adam and Eve got kicked out. He certainly wouldn't be welcome. He'd be in a major war all the time. So that's where this is here, Rubus Negro. And then, of course, we have all these land masses here, that any one of them could be Eden, because this is South America back here, right? And Central America. In order to find clues, we need to think about the fact that most of the waters going into the Sea of Maat it's an indrawing sea. It draws everything towards the Rubus Negro and then down into an abyss. Down into an abyss. Okay? Down into an abyss. And so it's almost like it's where everything gets cleaned and it goes right down into the darkest places. And we know that Tartaria and Gog and Magog and all that are close to that. And there's been people who've recorded noises of the underworld from up there, up north. So it's kind of not necessarily a positive place. And it's a cold place. It's not warm like where the Most High says he descends in the opposite place in the south. And then people are like, well, is it the South Pole? No, I don't think so. But something that the South shows us is that when we take this map and we flip it vertically and we put the North Rubus Negro up here, directly beneath it is this other sea-looking thing, a circular area. And it's actually called the mare or water humorum. And if you'll notice, with all of the seas go north. All of the rivers go north. They may go east and west, but eventually they all go north, like the River Tina, the Nile. Everything flows to the north to the indrawing seas to be purified. And the oceans are the darkest up north, and they're the clearest and the cleanest and the lightest in the south. And so if this is humorum, that means water, humidity, sea of water. It could very well be that this is where the clean water potentially comes out of. Now, there are underground springs and everything that it also comes out of, because the earth is like a tree. It's got all these levels to it. And so there are underground streams beyond the sea salty water. But I'm just taking note of that because there is a lot of fresh water that comes up from the south. And it would make sense for it to travel up through oceans and rivers and everything, and then up to the Rubus Negro. So that's one clue. Another is when we take a look at, here's the Oxford University map, okay? And look how small it shows Africa as compared to on the moon. It's just like it shows, maybe it's a little further up, but still it really shows the rest of the world as being huge. But it does show these lands between North America and Africa as being pretty huge and numerous. There's a lot of them, all the way down here. And here we are at South America. So, but this is still the Mediterranean here. So, yeah, just not quite sure. But regardless, this is a good reference. See, there's where the map of the world fits over top on this, like so. So it fits pretty well. But what do we see here? There's land right here and all the way to here. And when we look and we see that X kind of marks a spot. So this is one of the lines that would go across, straight across to the United States. And if it was on this angle, which lines up with the other maps that I showed you, the plasma map, okay, lines up with this thing here, except I had to flip it and reverse it and do all this stuff to make the X mark the spot. And it's very similar to the X on the clock. Similar location, okay? Similar location. You know, it's getting pretty close. It's between Israel and Addis Ababa, really, this axis. So it's pretty close. And so we could venture to say that Eden is somewhere, well, probably right about here. And again, there aren't flights that go over this. And the reason why I showed you, again, the map of the transatlantic slave trade, because it's as though it was going around it, around these lands in a triangle. And they called it the triangular slave trade. Well, why would you be going in a triangle like that? Like, it just seems like it's a perfect circumvent. You know, the Book of Beginnings talks about Tamari, talks about Esau. Esau is Tamari, Ottoman, Taman, okay? And that, according to Aulus Gellius, Egypt was once named Area, the Egyptian Ur. So Ur is light, actually, or air is the name of the river Yar. So Area is the land of the river, possibly. So Aria can relate to like Ariel, which means a lion, right? And so Egypt was called the land of the lion, Aria. It also means Aries or ram. And it also means the land of the river, probably with further meaning as Ia means to wash, whiten, purify. Another name for Egypt is Tamari. Now, Tamari, I don't know, because that's kind of going back to Esau. Because when we flip this map upside down, this might actually be the true picture. With Eden down here, closer to the bottom, the sun and the moon in the middle, the north up top, who knows? But this just might be another picture, and we may have to even reverse this. So there's a lot of things that could inform us, but the big question here comes down to both, you see, the time of the length of the day that if it's called out of what is currently known as Israel is along the same latitudinal line as Cairo. And Cairo is also the land of Esau. It was originally associated with him as well. Now, currently, Addis Ababa is also associated with Esau, but it's associated with the rest of those tribes, those brothers and sisters of Israel, the Midianites, the Ishmaelites. All of them are mixed together there, dwelling there. And of course, prophetically, the Midianites are still dwelling in righteousness, holding to that priesthood until the time, and it's written in the Quran, when the sun rises from the west and returns to the east. And so the question is, do I call it out 1 week early from Addis Ababa with the perfect 12-hour day, or do I call it out from Israel and Cairo? And so that's the question I'd like you guys to answer. Maybe I'll figure out how to put a what is it called, a poll in this, so that you guys can tell me. But nonetheless, we're trying to find the location of the navel of the earth, which is truly Eden. Eden's the navel of the earth. So let me know what you guys think, and I hope you enjoyed this. And once again, you can make donations to intoalltruth.net, get the calendar, get the recipe and fasting and wellness book based on Hebraic thought. And I'm going to go into this further. I'm going to review a lot of this in another video where I talk about creation, Yah's tree of life from the beginning to the end. So this is the capstone and the cornerstone basically that I'm going to talk about, which is related to the code that I discussed in the Yahuwah is the tree of life. Yahusha is the tree of life video. So I'm going to go back into this question once I get some feedback and do more research, because I don't have the answer, but please let me know. I need you guys to tell me, should the calendar be called out from Cairo and so-called Jerusalem of today, or out of Addis Ababa, which goes parallel to about where the land of Ham and the land of Shem meet, near the Gihon River, okay? And that's near the Horn of Africa, all the way out to Atlantis being near the Gihon, near the land of Shem and Ham, okay? So please let me know. I'm very interested to know what you guys think, and it's not a decision I want to make on my own. I'm making it prayerfully. So, and also I have my other videos coming up on Prester John, rightly dividing Israel, Esau from Jacob, as well as we're going back to Japheth. Okay, so thank you so much for watching. Baruch atah. Shalom. So thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. Like, subscribe, and share. Share this with your non-Israelite friends, your Gentile friends. Gentiles, share this with one another. So that's everybody outside of Israel. Share it with one another, please, because you got to get out of Babylon. And it doesn't matter that Canada is Japheth's land, because Yah is destroying all of it. He said the West is determined for destruction. Okay? And this is the West. So please make donations. Go to intoalltruth.net, which is livelightwell.com. You can get a calendar or a cookbook. I am working on the calendar, but I will keep your name in a list. I'll send you the existing one, and then when I update it, I'll send you the updated one. Please make a donation there, $25 or more for each, so that you can keep this channel going and keep me doing my work. I appreciate all donations in the name of Yahusha. May Yah bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine on you. May he be gracious, lift the light of his countenance, and give you peace. All right, so return Yahuwah to the countless thousands of Yasharel. Shuvah Yahuwah Revaot Yasharel. Hallelujah. All praises to the Most High. Like, subscribe, share, donate. Toda. Thank you for watching. Baruch.
Israel, we love, worship, and praise Yahweh. Give him thanks by saying hallelujah.